Okay, so Frank and Dianne, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I know you're both incredibly busy and you've probably got a million things to be doing on the farm, but I just wanted to give everyone a brief overview about both of you and the impact you've had today before we get stuck into how you're revolutionising farming. So essentially, you're Australian banana farmers. You have been for over 30 years. You're based in Innisfail, Queensland, and you make the signature red wax tip bananas. I think there's different colors, but everyone seems to get it when I say they're the guys that make the wax tip bananas. They're like, oh yeah, I know those guys. You're leaders in regenerative farming, pioneering a world-first system called EcoGanic, which requires no chemicals and is truly organic and exceeds all industry benchmarks. You've developed an integrated ecological management monitoring system, which independently audits the outcomes of EcoOrganics and is now a globally recognised certification. Your eco-organic farming model is also used as best practice example to educate students on how to implement sustainable end-to-end business practices from farm to market. It's currently being used in James Cook CQ Uni and dozens of New South Wales private high schools, if I'm correct.
Yep.
You're also a reef-friendly banana, having won the Prince of Wales Environmental Leadership Great Barrier Reef Award, and you're the only farmers to have won it to date still, if that's correct.
Correct.
Yeah. You are the first Australian banana farm to achieve international standards for environmental management, endorsed by the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. You deliver leftover bananas to homeless shelters, and you ship over 80 tonnes of red-tipped bananas every week across Australia and also to overseas, where you're the largest banana exporter to Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia and Singapore.
Correct.
Wow, that's like...
Exporter from Australia.
Yes.
We're very, very small compared to global standards, but we're the only one exporting out of Australia to those destinations.
Got it. Regardless, all of that is one hell of a rap sheet in terms of achievements over a 30-year history. So you must be incredibly proud of what you've done. So before we kind of get stuck into the specifics of EcoOrganics, I was wondering, how did you actually get into farming in the first place?
Well, it's sometimes I think it's in your vein. My parents were farmers, and their parents were farmers, and I suppose you get brought up with that farming family, and you just seem to connect with it. And I loved it right from the start. So it's just something that I feel it's in you.
Yeah. And Dianne,
Frank did a trade and then went back to the land. So obviously it was a calling.
Yeah.
I think soil and plants are either in your blood or they're not. Because it is a way of life, and you do have to love that environment and to be in tune with it.
Yeah. So you came from a farming background as well, Dianne?
My mum's family were off the land.
Yeah.
I spent most of my school holidays with my grandparents. So they had sheep, pigs, cattle. I loved every second of my holidays with my grandparents there. It was just where you sort of wanted to be. So marrying a farmer certainly wasn't a challenge. It just felt natural, I guess.
Yeah. It certainly is. It has been an undervalued, I guess, skill, like learning how to work with the land. But because of what's been happening over the last 10 years and all the environmental degradation, it's certainly coming back into focus again. So I think what you guys are doing is suddenly becoming very, very coveted by, whether they're organizations or just even humanity in general. We're kind of realizing that, being so out of sync with the land for so long has led us to this point. So it's so awesome, Jen, people like you doing what you do, honestly.
Very early in my career, I worked for Harbour Board, local authority, and then TAFE for a little while after the girls were born. And one of the biggest things I recognised was that people on the land undervalue their skills and their capacity and their resilience. And when the, what do you call them, registered training authorities, the RTOs, first started, I was privy to all of the outcomes from those curriculum, and it really did not acknowledge the skill set that farmers have got. A lot of the introductory stuff was things that they just do every day, without realizing that it's a skill, you know, like how to service a tractor, you know, how to be in tune with that machine to make sure that when you're using it, it's doing the job properly for the crop, but as well as for the machine. And that's something that's not taught in any curriculum, yet farmers just innately have that skill set.
Yeah, no, like nothing, society, humanity doesn't work if the farmers don't know what they're doing, to be honest. So, you know, we've just gotten used to being able to go into a grocery store and pick up food and it's just there, but we take for granted what you guys do at the coalface to actually get those things into the supermarket. So I read a study, it was quite sad, that most children these days can identify more brands than they can plants, which is really sad. But I think there is definitely a swing back to nature in terms of like getting back to basics, everyone eating more organically, or not even organically, just the way we should have been eating in the first place. So
I think, you know, there's a part there, and I don't know how, you can't see it, but it's there. It's within the farmer himself. It's like his soul connects with the soul of the earth, and you know, it's having that connection, and you know, and that's what gives you that perseverance, that you know, that you don't give in, that you just keep going, and you always, you know, you're always, because it feels right. It feels right doing what you're doing and connecting with with nature itself. I think that's something that you know, that's missing, that people, you know, once you're a farmer, that's something that starts to happen to you.
yeah, it's sort of like the only way you know how to be, right? Because in terms of like, I was watching your Landline interview, and it sort of seems like there's two kind of key philosophies that underpin sort of eco-organics. And one is the fact you talked a lot about respecting nature's intelligence or natural intelligence. And you said, you talked a lot about, you know, the farming that eco-organic is working with nature to increase the natural capital of the land versus harvesting it for profit over people and planet. And you had this lovely excerpt where you said, it's taken nature thousands of years to create this sophisticated web that works in perfect harmony on its own. We now have to work with that and bring in science to help solve the problems we created.
Absolutely.
And this is the fundamental difference between organic and eco-organic. Organic philosophy is still mimicking commercial farming. So it's about using a product that still allows you to control that pest. And you can still put unlimited amount of organic fertilizer out to get the yield that you need to be competitive with commercial farming. EcoGanic throws all of that philosophy out the window. It's about, and this is where pricing is critical, but it's about throwing that system and that framework out the window and working with, okay, what do I have to do to get this ecosystem back in balance? And unfortunately, you have to remove chemicals from the soil. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. So then you get a whole, because you've created a sterile environment by using high amounts of synthetic products, you're going to have a lot of pest damage, and it's going to take a long time to get back. We found that we saw no real difference in the soil for about 4 years. We had a lot of loss to pest damage in the first 2 years until we started to get a little bit of beneficial protection. But it's really been probably 10 or so more years that we've seen the real change in the structure of our soil and the capacity of the soil to generate what they call organic carbon. You know, there's this organic thing of, we'll put out heaps of mulch, but that can actually have the reverse effect to what you're trying to achieve. If people don't understand the science.
No,
you know,
I don't think they do, to your point, because I didn't really understand as well until I started working with you guys, and I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between conventional farming and what you do, which is regenerative farming. So I was wondering if you could explain that, because you also mentioned that it does take time, like shifting from conventional to regenerative. It's almost like a drug addict weaning off drugs. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about the difference between conventional and what you guys do, which is regenerative, and why does there need to be this period of time where the land needs to wean itself off the drugs?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. It's like everything. You get used to what you do, and you have pest problems. The easiest way to solve those pest problems comes in a form today of a 20-litre drum. And it can be a synthetic product, it can be an organic product, but the thinking and the process is one of, I need to fix a problem that I've got, right? And that problem has been created by me, really, because I'm trying to push the system, right, to deliver for production, to deliver more. I need to get more out of the system because it's all about that commercial gain. Volume, productivity is about dollars and cents. And that's been the biggest focus for farming, is how do we get more out of the system? And it's not having any respect for and know-how or knowledge about, how the system works. How does it all come together? How does everything relate to each other in the system? So you've got your grasses, your weeds, your nematodes, your bugs. All those things are all interconnected together. They are all one. So a farmer has to, get the confidence, be confident and believe, right, that nature has the ability to solve a lot of his agricultural problems, right, that come from the position of, I want more and more. I want to create a high stress farming system. I need to get more out of the system. And it's not until, you start to realize, growers that will start to realize, I can do without these chemicals if I'm just patient enough and then I understand enough, right, about how the system works, what nature has given us, right? And it takes time, right? And it depends on the farmer himself and his ability to have the confidence to capture the knowledge, so that he can move forward with the confidence that he needs to have. And once they've seen that you don't need all those drugs and you don't need all those chemicals that you're using, right? They become more sustainable. They take a different approach and they move in a different direction. But that needs to be also supported. That story needs to go out and needs to be all supported by the consumer, everybody else, because look, at the end of the day, it's creating a healthy ecosystem on your farm. It's creating a healthy community, right, and healthier people, not just for you here, but globally.
Just to give you a couple of examples of farming practices, Jen, like in bananas in particular, traditionally the banana industry saw grasses and weeds or any growth interrow as a competitor to nutrition for the banana plant. So it was spray it all out, have bare dirt. We live in the highest rainfall city in Australia, so heavy rains, water running off farms is red, full of chemical and fertilizer that goes onto the reef. So going back 15, 18 years ago now, the first thing we identified was that the rooting system on some of your weeds, when that weed dies, actually puts nutrition back into the soil, but that takes time. So we started to look at weeds and grasses. The flowering on weeds and grasses became a food source for other insects that you needed to come back. So we saw them as assets rather than as a liability to the farming system itself. Now, the industry has just recently, in the last 18 months, said that the farmers must keep, what's the percentage, Frank, that the ground cover has to be?
Well,
there's a percentage there now that they have to leave. So instead of it being 100% bare, I think it's something like 60%.
It's something that's something like it's not legislative.
Yeah, so that's a huge improvement. But the sad part about it is that's being driven by regulation and not driven by knowledge on the actual farming system itself. Now, because we removed insecticides from the soil, we've got numerous ant species coming back. Those ants go up the tree, they go out to the bunch, and they feed on pest mites that get onto that bunch as it opens up with the flower, which industry goes around and sprays a carcinogenic chemical onto to control the insect, because it's insecticide, it's an insect. So you've got insecticides, miticides, nematicides, herbicides, and fungicides. So they're your different grades, whether you're trying to kill a fungicide, whether you're trying to kill grass that's a herbicide, mites or nematodes in the soil, and then you've got just flat out categories of insecticides. So there's a whole range of things that you're using to kill things that are in the environment that have the capacity to change how that banana looks.
Yeah, it's like listening to what you've both said. It almost like when sort of mass industrialization kicked in, it's almost like we applied that philosophy to the land without actually acknowledging that actually these are living sentient things that are all interdependent on one another. And if we treat it like a factory, which is all innate objects, which I think is what happened with the Puritans in America when they first landed. They just harvested the land and then they died because the land just didn't have enough time to regenerate. And I think you're right. It's an awareness piece. People don't realize that the interconnectedness is not to be controlled. It's actually to be respected and acknowledged. And if you let it kind of play its course, it will do so much more for you than you can imagine. Because I loved what you said, Frank, as well, about you talk about the insects as your indispensable employees and you give them staff titles, job titles like predator, recycler, pollinator, soil creator, and scavenger. And I think, that kind of philosophy that you guys have as farmers is kind of what we need to apply to society in terms of fixing a lot of things, which is about, looking at the system as a whole, about respecting us all as a collective, about, acknowledging the interdependence we have with one another, not just spraying someone because it's not exactly what we want to do or need. So I was wondering if, and I think it's awareness piece too, a lot of people don't understand. I didn't either until I started working with you guys. I didn't understand the intricate nature of the interconnectedness of biology in nature, and the fact that when you do understand it, you go, of course it takes time. You can't make that happen like an ATM. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that, because that's obviously a very important pillar in EcoOrganics, as well as like respecting and allowing that time for that interconnectedness to play out.
It took a lot of years of monitoring and understanding the roles certain things play in the ecosystem, and what weeds come up at a certain time of the year and then they fall away, and then you've got also the cycles within the year. You have your winter, your summers, your springs, and everything changes within those cycles, and those cycles are very important balancing aspects that nature has given us. It's amazing. It doesn't allow any one thing to come out of balance and become dominant and create problems. So everything's so well balanced out, and nature has done an absolutely wonderful job in that, and it's carefully planned how when certain things happen. It's only when we interfere in it that we create those bigger problems, and then we try correcting them, in some sort of chemical form or to try and fix the situation. But once you allow the weeds and certain weeds to come up, the ground, the soil changes. And as the soil structure changes and the health of the soil, then you get a different, a more diverse weed community, a diverse grass community come up. And, as the years go on, we start to measure the ecosystem. And we can start to see the diversity in the ecosystem. So once where we say had a diversity index of, say, 5 or 6, we're seeing that when you got a diversity index of 8 and 9 now. And, saying, well, there's species here that we never seen before. There's things here that commonly you never seen them before, but they're coming back. They're here. And that's what gives you the confidence. You feel, you say, I know I'm on the right track here because I'm getting, I'm not having the pest problems, and I'm not, it's all working out for me. I'm getting the confidence. I know this actually works, and it's good.
Yeah,
it takes years though.
I think a classic result of this is Panama, which is a global problem. It's a fungus problem in the industry, which there is no chemical that can kill it because it's been created because there's been a resistance to fungicide as a result of overuse or misuse of fungicide. And one of the things that we've learnt through the research that's been done globally is the environment that Panama does not like is exactly the environment that we've created on our farm.
Yes.
So Panama loves a sterile environment, a stressed environment. It doesn't like an environment where you've got
huge diversity of other.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny how we've it's not funny actually, it's ironically tragic how we've created the problems that are killing us. So similarly with the fish consuming plastic in the ocean, and then we're eating it now, we're starting to see the impacts of that. Same with Panama. It's a problem we created, and the way that we can solve it is actually just returning everything back to the way nature intended it in the first place.
But Jen, it all comes down to, right, it comes down to the marketplace. It comes down to dollars and cents. Growers, farmers, most farmers, I don't think they want to pollute their farm, their earth, and I think it's the market system, or the way the whole setup is. It's about dollars and cents, and it doesn't reward. It's about productivity. There's nothing there to reward anybody that says, I am putting carbon back into the soil. I am bringing my biodiversity back. I'm creating a healthier ecosystem for my community. But yes, I'm a farmer and I'm growing healthy product now. How, and you're not getting paid on that. You're getting paid on, the volume, the output of your produce that you're putting out, and it's got to be blemish free, and it's got to look a certain size. Things that are sometimes completely against looking after the environment. So that's the change I think that needs to happen. So more farmers can make that transition or go that way, so they can help each other.
Yeah, because like you said, farming's in your blood, right? It's like it's something that you're into or you're not. And there's no farmer, alive that would willingly do this to their land, but they're trying to survive in a system that isn't incentivizing them to do the right thing and take the time and make the natural product. So the shift really has to come from the retailers demanding a certain type of product, and also consumers understanding to not demand those products or not buy those products, because
Right.
It's just, unfortunately, if we, could wave a magic wand, we'd just redo it all again. But we have to, like you say, wean ourselves off the system that we've created that's making us sick, in order to get there. So yeah, the farmers, absolutely, everyone knows the farmers need more support, and the government can get their shit together and do a little bit more there too. So I'm wondering, like, in terms of, because you guys decided this was a big step for you to kind of move away from conventional farming into regenerative farming. And you mentioned it started in the 1980s. So you guys are like well ahead of your time, long before everyone was talking about sustainability and, social impact and doing the right thing. And you both said you made a decision to repair and share the land with every living organism. And you were going to turn back the clock 60 years in order to do that. But as a result, which is I find really strange, like you got a lot of industry backlash. Like people were laughing at you, they were criticizing you, they didn't want you to succeed. Like you said before, Dianne, it took a long time to see results, which would have made some really interesting dinner conversations between the two of you. People go crazy. I mean, what made you decide to do it, for one? And then secondly, what motivated you to stay the course, particularly when you're sitting in uncertainty and no tangible positive benefits for 3, 5, 6 years?
Oh, that's a really easy question to answer, Jen. Two things simply. Frank grew up watching his father farm the way we say 60 years ago. He did a trade. He had his own business as an auto electrician, and then came back to the farm at a time when he met me and we got married. And at that point in time, so you're talking about a 15 to 20 year period that he's seen the sugar industry go downhill, for want of a better word, I guess, because soils were now becoming burnt out. So we had a 2,000 tonne cane farm, and over a period of a couple of years, he was like, okay, I need 5,000 tonne just to put food on the table. Something's not right. CCS, sugar content's dropping, my yield's dropping. At that stage, the banana industry was undersupplied, so we decided that he was going to put bananas in to pay the tax bill. So we needed money to pay the tax on the sugar, but we had no profit. That was the drive to look at, because he said, I'm not going to farm the way I've farmed the cane. I'm going to do this differently. So without me knowing, he was tinkering with what the agronomists were telling him how he should grow bananas to the way he felt this needed to go. So he'd been doing that for about 2 or 3 years without me even knowing. And also Frank used to, I think you've probably read this story a few times, where he used to dive. So he was very, very much
I didn't know that.
Educated or knowledgeable on ecosystems on the reef, and watching if a certain species of marine fish or something was somewhere, then you'd see this and you'd see that. So I know that was a subconscious driver for looking for that same ecosystem but on land. And that was what was driving the change in the banana production. And after about 3 years, he came to me and said, I think I can do it commercially. I'm like, do what? Like, yeah, okay. But I need the consumer to know that every time they buy my banana, that's a banana that's been grown this way. So probably for about 6 months, he was walking around like a crazy guy trying to find a way of identifying his bananas. I was working at TAFE at the time, and I came home and here's these bananas dipped in paint sitting on the bench. And he said, this is what I want my bananas to look like. And I thought, you are crazy. Nobody is going to buy a banana that looks like that. But then I thought, you know what? So what? Who cares? What have we got to lose? So we started working on the cheese grade wax. That's another whole story in itself, to modify that so that it was biodegradable, but it could be used in a commercial situation of a banana going in and out of cold and being heated in a car when the shopper takes it home. The big thing was to be able to identify it, because we needed to be able to get a price to cover the cost of production. Otherwise we wouldn't be here today. And that took a long time. It was a huge challenge, because you're changing a mindset of the way the whole market system works. And that is, you send food, it's perishable, and the agent sells it, but they don't really care whether it covers the grower's cost of production, because they're able to take the margin to cover their cost. Everybody in the supply chain is going to be paid, you're going to pay your carton bill and your freight bill. So the farmers always left at the mercy of what's left over. We had to take ourselves outside of that framework, that business framework and that selling framework. So obviously our sales were going to be pretty slow in the beginning, but Frank and I are not driven by money. So when you say like it took a long time, this was never about getting to a point where you had a marketing gimmick and you were making money. It was never about that. It was about changing the way we farm, get it on the table in front of the consumer, and at least cover our cost production, which we weren't doing under the commercial system anyway. So we had nothing to lose, because we weren't going to survive the other way. And either, as long as we can pay our bills and put food on the table, that was our goal, and not have to worry about paying bills, and at the same time protect that environment that you were growing your food in. So those were our goals. So as long as we could achieve that, that was all that really mattered.
Yeah. And it's an incredible testament to your integrity and values as human beings, because not many people would do that. Like, expend all of this time and money just to do the right thing, just as long as they could get by and obviously look after their children. Because I read as well, Dr. Tony Patterson, who's from the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, he's been studying your soil since 2012.
2002.
2002, sorry, yeah. And he presented a paper in Paris to say that what you've done with Ecoganics is well ahead of its time at a global level. So, like, it's paying off. And I know that wasn't your motivation. It was always just to do the right thing and leave a legacy for your children and their children, to have an earth that, is the way that you guys grew up in it. So I wanted to now sort of let people know, or get in your words, a little bit more about the eco-organic farming system and what the unique characteristics of it are. Because as you said, it's produced and marketed on a sustainable framework. And there's also some really interesting things I'd love you to expand on, in terms of like the mentor role you play for farmers, the management and support services to farmers as well, and anything else that you feel it's important to talk about.
Integrity for us, Jen, was utmost. So getting farmers in the first place, we looked for people that wanted to farm sustainably. That wasn't necessarily the correct formula. It needed to be a combination of believing in sustainability, but more good business sense, because unfortunately, a lot of the organic thinking is that, that the consumer is going to buy it if it doesn't look great. So they don't have the marketing knowledge to support the change either. And I think that's where the organic system has its greatest weakness has been over time. So there's a whole lot of marketing, marketing business, I guess, that needs to be understood, but also the human behaviour side of the consumer. I actually went back to uni at this point. It was at the same time both my girls were starting uni as well. So being the mum I am, I also wanted to have a good look at what university life was like and look at what the negatives were. And I thought if I got there first, I can sort of head off any dangers for them. But at the same time, I was using it to cherry pick subjects that could help in the business. So I was taking subjects like marketing, consumer behaviour and things like that. At the same time, Frank was developing the farming system. I was working alongside him in developing a business framework and a marketing framework. So he was setting up monitoring of insects in the paddock, because he said, I can't be on every farm all the time making sure that farmers are doing what they should be doing. So we made this growers management meeting monthly, and it was sacramental. Like, if someone couldn't come, we would cancel and reschedule. I think we've probably cancelled about a dozen meetings in the entire 18 years, and most of those have been because of us having to travel. So that sort of indicates the loyalty of the group. And at those meetings, we spend a third of our time talking about the issues with regards to farming, and we still do that today, the changes and what they're seeing, which gives Frank knowledge for him to be able to think about, where to next. So, the good things, the bad things, the what ifs, the maybes, all that sort of thing is a brainstorming session. And then we talk about the environmental side, then we talk about marketing, and then we talk about business. So that happens once a month. And then on the farm, Frank was like, I need to set up a monitoring system so that I don't have to be on farm. I can just look at this report and I know exactly what's going on. So with the help of DPI, we set up this monitoring record sheet where we were looking at certain species of ants, certain species of spider, monitoring the biodiversity on farm, and that's all counted. So, oh gee, Frank, we did that very, very early in the piece back in 2004, I think it was, around about there. That monitoring system has been modified over time as we learn more. But we have an entomologist that goes on farm fortnightly to each farm. So she's taking samples of stuff, taking photos, and recording what's in insect traps, as well as monitoring what insects are on biodiversity in the paddock. And then a rating system was set up as well. So, and then we built a purpose-built database. So every input on the farm goes into that database, from weather to nutrition, any synthetic product that's used, any product that's used is inputted into that. And then we have this other database that runs simultaneously. So Frank can print reports out, look at graphs, and because it's so complex, there's no one report that you can just print out. So quite often you'll see on the wall numerous reports, and he's looking at correlations between those. Does that give you a feel for what you were trying to understand?
Yeah, because I think that obviously what you've developed is currently for you guys are banana farmers, but it has applications to other industries as well, doesn't it? Like
absolutely. So it's just about identifying what should be there in that particular environment.
Yeah, because the journey for farmers is quite. It takes about 5 years. Is that correct? To kind of shift from conventional to eco-organic? Because there's a period of time where you've got to wean them off all the...
It depends, Jen, it depends on the environment, and it depends on what the farmer's doing. So every environment is unique and different. And there are a lot of farmers out there that are actually reducing a lot of what they're using. So you can come onto a farm where, you know, you can look at it and you can say, this we're wasting our time here. Or you can say, my God, I could turn this guy around in 2 years. Until you assess the environment to see what's there, and his capacity, once again, his capacity to embrace the knowledge and work with it. Because if he's not working with it, then you've got a really time-consuming job and potentially a battle to get him there. Yeah. Even though sometimes his conscious is telling him, I want to do this, but his subconscious is going to say, well, it'll get to a point of crisis where he could lose, you know, $30,000 because he's not using something, and he subconsciously might make a decision, I'm going to use this product.
Yeah, it's definitely a commitment, isn't it, to Ecoganics, because it will take the time to restore the natural capital of the land and then start seeing a yield, but you support the farmers through that whole process.
Absolutely. And all those projects for the eco-organic farming system are documented within ISO 14001, which is an international standard for environmental management. So the first hurdle, of course, is to have ISO 14001, because if you can't embrace that, you won't be able to manage the mindset and the capacity to get to eco-organic. So that's sort of like a bit of a prerequisite for us. And then the key eco-organic projects to get EcoGanic certified are then documented within that framework. So we've intertwined the two together. Sorry, Frank, you were going to say something.
I just wanted to, what Jen was getting to in regards to, you know, EcoGanic can be taken across anywhere, you know, a desert, any because you've got different climatic conditions and different ecosystems throughout Australia, throughout anywhere in the world. And it's basically, it's identifying what is there in, you know, what was there before in the ecosystem there before, and how do you manage that land, right, that you're on, right, it's by monitoring the natural aspect of that land and bringing those ecosystems, bringing those insects, bringing that whole ecosystem back, whether it be funguses, bacteria, microbes, nematodes, all those things, bringing back that diversity. I think that's key. It's identifying what's there and bringing it back, restoring. It is exactly that, restoring the ecosystem to make them healthy again. Because right now, a lot of farming has created unhealthy ecosystems on their land. And yes, the carbon's not entering the soil because the recyclers aren't there to recycle, organic mulch and stuff to bring back that, to feed microbes in the soil and bring it back in carbon in the, like label carbon back into the soil so it can flourish and create different funguses and different communities under the soil, which, you've got ecosystems everywhere, underneath the soil, above the soil, and it's bringing that all back. That's the focus. And to be able to do that, you need to have a monitoring system and you need to know what's there. So what I've got here in North Queensland on our banana farm is certainly going to be different to New South Wales, Victoria, Southeast Queensland, and it could be, even in the drier parts of middle of Australia, what ecosystems are there. It's all about identifying them, looking at their potential and monitoring them so that what you're doing, right, is not impacting or changing the ecosystems or creating an unhealthy thing. So EcoGanic does exactly that. So it's completely different to organic, whereas organic, I've seen it as very selfish, because it's about somebody buying something, right, and saying, I think this is healthy and it's healthy for me because I perceive, because it's organic and I don't want those chemicals and things. This is for me, right? And the point there being, right, I'm not worried about what happens anywhere else. It's for me. So I asked the question, if the Earth ecosystems are getting sicker and sicker and the Earth is becoming sicker, how can organic produce keep you healthier? Because you're part of that whole Earth, the whole globe that we live in, where we're connected. And what happens to me what happens here in Australia or in my neck of the woods here has an impact, actually, because I belong to an ecosystem, I belong to the Earth's ecosystem, and what happens here impacts on somebody in Japan or China or and vice versa, because that's what it's about. So EcoGanic's about getting our own little ecosystems and our own, starting from that point where we're creating that health back and the understanding and the respect for it back. This system is different to all other systems because it brings back what we as humans were supposed to be doing. And that's looking after the Earth we live in for our future generations and generations to keep coming. And getting that message of EcoGanic through and the importance of what it stands for is important. And I don't want it to let it be confused with organic. Yes, we have organic farming practices, but we go beyond that. It's taking it up to another step, to another level, right? So that's the message. That's what we're trying to bring through.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important distinction as well, because I think people are confusing the two and thinking if I just buy organic, it's good enough. And it's like, well, actually, no, the paradigm shift is organic is very narrow-minded, very selfish. We need to take it up to the next level, which is about recognizing it's sort of like the butterfly effect. Like what we do here will impact people on the other side of the world and vice versa. So we need to be conscious of how we're getting to things collectively. And there are a number of benefits for eco-organics, that for the farmers, for consumers, and for retailers. So as I understand it, the farmers, it can actually save them money in terms of the amount of pesticides they use, like up to $163,000. For consumers, it's actually a better tasting product in terms of the bricks. all that sort of stuff. And with the retailers, it's better shelf life.
Absolutely, Jen. It's, in our farming system, we just don't talk about being sustainable or use that word loosely, sustainable, and say we actually can show where it relates to dollars and cents. We have saved huge amounts of money in our farm with taking processes out that were like scab moth control, which was a big, huge, costly part of the farming, of banana farming. It's been removed because we've developed a good ecosystem where we don't have those problems. So this is what it's all about, not having mite problems because we have predators. We've developed all those systems to take care of all that. So I don't need a synthetic or organic insecticide or pesticide to solve those problems. So EcoGanic's is about creating the systems where you're not using any other thing. So that in the true sense for me is what sustainability is about, or becoming sustainable is all about. But I'd like to add though, you need to put science into this, and you need to have you need to know what is actually happening. You can't assume things, and I think because sometimes we assume creates huge problems. I've had cases where I've seen compost being an example of this, where we have a look and we think compost is really good and it's good for the soil. Yes, it is. There's no doubt, right? So we're going to put a lot more compost. We can, but so think about it, right? You're changing the ecosystem. Nature had never intended it, right, to be like that. So, it changes the whole ecosystem, and therefore you're starting to imbalance and create problems. So, you may have a situation where you have not enough recyclers to recycle the compost, or not the right recyclers that in your system, because you're using pesticides or insecticides in there, right? A lot of that organic carbon is going to oxidize and go back into the air, CO2. So you probably can be creating a worse situation without even knowing that that's actually happening. It's important, therefore, that you need to have monitoring systems. You need to have science to back it and support it.
Yeah, and you guys. Sorry, keep going, Dianne.
Yeah, I must say, Jen, I get so disillusioned at times, because the marketplace is just driven by profit. But we get schools that come to our farm, and it's sort of like a slow organic movement, because one school child will tell another, and then that teacher will find out, and then they'll ring us, but they're not sharing it, but the kids are making it happen. So we've got about 5 or 6 schools from New South Wales that have been coming now for quite a few years, and we've got a Canadian and a French that come every second year, and I've got some ecotourism groups that have started coming as well. And I have hope, because they're not children, they're young adults, they're anywhere from year 9 to year 12, and the French group are actually a gap year group from in between high school and university. And these kids are asking questions, the ones that are switched on and are interested in their future. There's some really bright young ones there. Some of them, of course, don't really care, but it gives me hope, because when you listen to some of the questions that some of these kids that are switched on are asking, I think, there is a small minority of youth there that are looking at this, because my concern is, government's not making this happen. So the only other alternative is through education. Yeah. And I do see signs of this coming through in the curriculum. So one of the things that we've been sort of working on now for a couple of years is to build agri science and tourism centre on the farm, because most of these schools that are coming are from higher socio-economic schools. So my concern is, there could be some amazing students in public systems that, if they had access to this knowledge, you know, where would it take their careers? So not only having, we've outgrown our office, you know, jamming 30 people into our office is sort of, we've reached our limit now, because some of the groups are only 9 people or 15 people, but we get quite a few groups that can be up around the 32 mark, and that's the limit of our squashing into the office. So to have like a centre where we can, I guess, technically share, because we can't take them to the lab. We've got a mobile lab on the farm where only sort of 2 or 3 people can fit in. But to have a situation where you could have students looking through a microscope, looking at what when we talk about nematode, what a good nematode looks like, the insect collection that we have, because we have a collection of what we've identified on the farm, having a space where you can share more of that knowledge, but also to be able to do more of this type of work that's more interactive than a small screen and you know, a class of students sort of sitting around it, to be able to share that. So that's something that I guess is the next phase for us, apart from sort of growing the culture and the knowledge with consumer, but to enter the education space with the younger generation.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to get the real change, aren't we? Because I think, yeah, the education system so far has kind of failed us in a lot of ways in terms of teaching us things that weren't necessarily important for life, but good for working in a factory. And I think that you're right. I have faith in humanity as well, despite what the media would show you. I think people are inherently good, and they're looking for beacons such as yourself to gravitate towards and go, this is how I can throw my weight around, throw my weight behind to support. This is what I can do to help. But it starts with an education piece to change their hearts and their minds so that they know what actions to take, because people, I believe, are inherently good. They just have been miseducated or left in the dark about what's actually good for them and the planet. So that's why I love that you're doing that agri-tourism centre. I think it's going to be a beacon for a lot of people, not just in Australia, but around the world, about how we should actually be doing farming moving forward. And why did we, and like you say, Frank, it's taking the best of both worlds. It's what we used to do that was in with nature, but also bringing in science where we need to kind of accelerate it.
We're coming up against the same challenges there though, Jen, because it's not an existing business. Being able to demonstrate the income flow to borrow money is becoming a challenge. And that's why I was hoping that if we were to go fund, we'd get a philanthropic type support from people that can see, you know, where that education channel needs to go to, and the sharing of that knowledge to, I don't know, create a more confident education and knowledge in that year 11, year 12 before they get to high school.
So are you going to say something, Frank?
I just love what you said in that you believe in people, and so do I. We both do. I believe in humanity, that we will find the right pathway, because in all of us, we have this I believe in a spirit I think we've developed, or that guides us, and that says, no, we're doing something wrong here. And it's sort of a protection to guide the next generation, and the generation. It keeps changing. So I love what you say. I think that's exactly right. I believe in humanity. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's tough sometimes, but generally that's where I normally land, is that we are more good than we are bad. But I'd love as well for people to be really clear on how they can support amazing people like yourselves and EcoOrganics, because I know everyone does want to help in some way. So obviously at an individual level, at a company level, at an institutional level, what would really help accelerate the impact, which, by the way, benefits all of us? It's not just you guys as a company and farmers. Like, what can we do as a society, individuals and groups, to really, really make sure we get you guys on the map and having the impact that you need for all of us?
I think the message needs to go to the supermarkets, Jen, because we know from our own market research that consumers are trying to buy the product, but it's not available to them. Mm-hmm. So that comes back to the supermarkets having the confidence of managing EcoGanic bananas in the same manner, I guess, that they manage any other product. So when you have a niche product, it's managed differently through the supply chain. And whilst we might save a lot of money on farm, it can actually become more expensive because being niche, you don't have access to some of the buying power that other commercial big players have. So that's a weakness for us. To get our costs down, it's more about being able to sell more of.
Yeah.
To access cheaper cartons, cheaper freight, things like that. So it's really the consumer saying to the supermarkets, yes, this is the sort of product we want to have available to us. And then the change coming within that sector of the market to make sure that that offer is available for the consumer to get that organic growth, which it's not happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you look at the way the machine works, you can understand why, because for the supermarkets, they've got to make their margins as well. They can't afford to have losses on shelf. So managing a niche product through those supply chains can be a challenge. But if they've got the confidence from consumer that, hey, we want to buy food that's not degrading the environment that it's grown in, I think that's where we need consumer support dramatically.
Yeah, because when I do mention it to people that I speak to, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And they shift straight away. Like they won't buy any other banana now. For them, it's a no-brainer. So I think it's just, yeah, to your point, getting the awareness for eco-organic bananas, because as soon as I go, there's one with the red tips, the wax tips, they're like, oh, it's a no-brainer for them. It's a shift straight away.
Because we have a website, I get a lot of emails from consumers saying, you know, I can't buy your product, and I'll email back and say, where are you? Then I'll go back to the supermarket, whether it be Coles or Woolies, and say, this consumer lives in this town. They said they can't get access to it. And the response is usually it's available. Mm-hmm. So what it means, it's up to that fruit and veg manager of that particular store to order it.
Yeah.
So unless they go to the fruit and veg manager and say, you know, I want to buy this product, he's not going to order it in. So there's no push coming, and the pull's not bringing the push through because there's this breakdown in communication at store level. So you know, having the consumer support to say to the fruit and veg manager when they go in looking for it, and everyone's time poor. So to hang around and wait for, you know, to find someone you can talk to and say, can you find me the fruit and veg manager, and then wait for him to come if he's even there at that time, you know. But there's other ways, you know, there's social media that you can talk to the supermarkets through too as well. I mean, landline was amazing for us because the amount of consumer that went looking for our product after landline did generate a small amount of sale, but then I saw it fall back into its status quo again. Mm-hmm. Because it was obviously generating work in that supply chain that, you know, where you get to the break-even point, if there's not enough sale, then it will fall back to the previous position. So it's just that push over the edge that we need, I think, you know, with the confidence of in that supply chain.
Yeah, we need more consumer demand, and we need the retailers acting on it more proactively. Any thoughts from you, Frank?
I'm confident. I feel like, you know, when I've talk to the guys from overseas, and you know, it's very hard to get a product like bananas and being able to put bananas in a shop in Hong Kong or Singapore or in different places. We have to compete with the Philippine bananas and, you know, cheap labour and a very low price product. So you know, I never thought there was an opportunity for export for us. But I started to see that that wasn't true. The opportunity was there. And, you know, when I spoke to the buyers over there and they said, look, we can buy organic bananas from South America, Mexico, anywhere else in the world and buy them very, very cheap. Right? And but we can't buy EcoGanic bananas anywhere in the world because your story is different. Right? And the fact that it's got a brand and it comes from Australia, they said it ticks all the boxes for us. Right? It ticks all the boxes. So, yes, you know, you can. We had in Hong Kong, eco bananas selling for $10 a kilo, and Philippine bananas selling for $2 a kilo, and we were still there. And it was amazing, because that showed me that the consumer, the people who knew and that supported the product, the opportunity was there. It wasn't just about price. It wasn't about money, just money. And that was an amazing outcome, an absolutely amazing outcome. So that tells me that there is opportunity. People are listening, and there are people out there wanting to support. And that I can see, it's just reaching out. It's just the logistics that are sometimes in between that are the hassles. But the thing is, people are starting to change. People are becoming more educated and understanding. So I can only believe that is going to grow more and more and more. And the shift will happen, and it probably will take its time in happening, of course. But I'm pretty confident that it will.
If there was any, I guess, because you're doing a lot of education already with some, universities and high schools. If there are any companies that were in that space or in the research space that wanted to partner with you or throw money at you, would that be something that you would be open to? Because I know you're also working on, in parallel, commercializing more, I guess, what's it called, natural solutions.
Yeah. Look, we just finished a project with JCU, one of the universities, and we had one person identify a fungus that was on our farm, and this fungus was actually helping the balancing of press thrips that we get on bunches, right? And we actually identified this coming off our farm. And the thing is here is that ecosystems develop their own mechanism how to keep things in balance, and we found a fungus within the Metarhizium family, that an isolate and a special fungus that had developed, and it's a mechanism of killing this thrip. And that was we found that on our farm, because the farm had been allowed to develop its ecosystems, right? It wasn't a fungus that we found in the rainforest or anywhere else. It was specifically in our farm, because it was doing that job here, and it was developed and had developed here. So whilst there is that mechanism or that fungus that we found here, we're 100% positive that there is so many other elements in the natural element here, in the biodiversity, that are developing within our ecosystems, that we need to sort of tap into and identify these products and make them into biological products that can help us make it so much easier in our farming. I don't know how far we can go. It's just mind-boggling in that area.
Basically, there's a million ways to work with you guys to help you accelerate your impact, whether it's partnering with you on special projects or supporting the Agritourism Centre, or going into store and demanding, wax tip bananas and, increased distribution, and basically just people knowing about you, I think, is the story in and of itself. And I'm so excited for people to find out about you, because you've been ahead of your time for decades. And I think there's a watershed moment happening in society, in the world at the moment, where what you're doing is exactly what the world needs. And I think that the time is now, and it's perfect. I can't wait for everyone to find out about you. You're incredible human beings, and from all of humanity, thank you for doing what you're doing to save us and do the right thing, and having such incredible values and integrity, and just sticking by your guns when it was so easy to walk away so many times. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with me and share a little bit about your journey and what you're doing.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. We're actually blessed that you've taken the time to share what you've discovered with us. So we can't thank you enough.
Oh, not at all. I'm just holding the mic for incredible people.
Well, Jen, thank you very much. And it's people, we all share the one common thing, and it's the love that we have. And that's so important. That's what it's all about. And yeah, we need to share that, and so that we can create a better society, a healthier society, and healthier ecosystems and healthier environment, because they all come together. The whole lot comes together in one big package.
Totally. It's a win for everyone, isn't it?
It is.
Well, thank you so much again. I've taken up a little bit more time than I expected to, but have an awesome weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk soon in some way, shape or form, especially with your lovely daughter. But take care, and please get some rest if you can.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.